Welcome to the 1 Minute Apologist. 1 Minute Apologist. Apologetics seeks to give credible answers to curious questions, to give a defense. What is the cost of following Jesus? The Bishop J.C. Ryle once said, "Nothing causes so much backsliding amongst disciples as not letting them know basically what they are taking in hand." It was A.W. Tozer that said there's only one of two things that we can do with the cross: flee it or die upon it. The late Dietrich Bonhoeffer said, when Christ calls a man, he bids him come and die. In the Bible, in chapter 9, verse 23 of the Gospel of Luke, Jesus said, "If anyone would come after me, let him deny himself, take up his cross daily, and follow me." What will following Christ cost a disciple? Well, it can cost you your reputation. It can cost you your comfort. It can cost you friendships. It can even cause family tensions. It can cost you your job security. It can cost a lot. In fact, it can ultimately cost you your life, as we've seen with the disciples of Jesus, as we see even today with certain Christians who are dying at the hands of ISIS or others throughout the world. We know also that it's important for us to count the costs before we sign up for this thing called Christianity. Now, we get into Christianity purely by faith and a sovereign work of God in our life. But Jesus was clear. He let people know the cost when he invited people to follow him. Now, when I was in India on a mission trip several years ago, it was the first time I was ever in the presence of people who were beaten for the gospel. I was in a village to the north and I saw several people who were just freshly beaten for the gospel. One guy was a new convert, and he was warned that if he goes back to his village, that his hands and feet would be cut off, and that his family, I think they said that they would pour kerosene all over his family and burn them to death. And I remember in that moment being torn up. In fact, one of the guys that was with us on the mission trip asked somebody to pray. And as we started praying, I wanted to run as far as I possibly could get and cry out loud. I was so overwhelmed in that moment. And I was about to preach, and I felt so unworthy. I mean, who am I from America? For us, we're suffering if we don't have padded seats in our churches. And these people sat for 4 hours on hard concrete. Some of the people walked 10 miles to this village just to hear the gospel preach. And they were looking at me as the trained authority. And I felt as though I had so much to learn from them. I felt so unworthy. And here, after hearing about this person who he can't even go back home without worrying about his hands and feet being cut off and his family being, martyred. And another guy from India, he said he's ready to die for the gospel. In other words, he's counted the cost. And I was overwhelmed. It was the first time I felt the gravity of the gospel in new proportions. Because when I was going to get up to preach, I knew that I may be sending these people to their death. And I had to really think about what it is that I believe and stand for. Jesus said, if anyone would come after me, we must deny ourselves and take up our cross and follow him. As I just said, would you consider following Jesus? He died for us so that we would be willing to live for him and even die if need be.